Hi, you guys. How are you doing? This is Richard Sachs. I'm the host on Lost Arts Radio, and this is Lost Arts Radio Live. And it's nice to be with you again. I hope you had a good week. Things are definitely getting more and more interesting. It's a nice way to put it, I guess, in the outside world. This virus situation, I mean, it and everything that goes with it, it's getting really challenging to say what's going on unless you just want to speak entirely freely and never be seen again. So we're trying to hit some kind of a appropriate balance and still be able to get the information out there that's useful. Not just news, because I mean, you've got lots of good news services, but kind of perspective on what it all means and what we can do about it. Because what's really interesting to me is not so much just the things that are being done to attack us, which is on all sides right now, that we're supposed to think is normal, and it's not. It's not just that stuff. It's, all right, so what does that mean is our best option of what to do? And I've started to do some short videos for the Lost Arts Radio Facebook group. I hope you've been seeing those. And the last one, I was talking about what I can't say. I can't even tell you some of the guests that we could have. In fact, I can't even have the guests because not on regular platforms, because they just result in us disappearing. So I told Doug, who's holding this whole show together and doing all the electronic and engineering work and everything else, if we would just do a show on wardrobes of the stars, you know, Hollywood fashions and things like that, we'd probably have millions of official viewers. Our view counters wouldn't go backwards, and there'd be a lot of major benefits from it. We'd probably get syndicated and everybody would watch, and it would be, you know, would be 100% that people liked it. But we never did that, obviously, and I don't really feel inclined in that direction. But I thought I'd kind of start the show tonight with a compromise offer, and something that wouldn't have any controversial aspects to it at all, that nobody could ever find politically incorrect or wouldn't offend anybody. Wouldn't be about the clothes that the stars are wearing, though. It would be something that our rulers would never find disturbing. So what could that be? Like, you'd think maybe some kind of a sports commentary, or presenting part of a music concert, or a travel show, or something like that, or maybe the most, you know, high level attraction like cat pictures or something like that. But I thought, no, I don't really want to do that stuff. So I'll try and do, how about a movie review? I'll choose a movie to review, just a little bit, not an hour-long review or anything. But I thought, all right, what's an interesting movie that comes immediately to mind? And because of a conversation that I was having this morning with someone, I thought of, how about the movie They Live? It was an old-fashioned horror movie. I think it was in 1988 with Roddy Piper and Keith David and Meg Foster. And it feels like, you know, it was on a few months ago, but actually it was 37 years, so, or 32 years. So I don't know if you guys saw it or saw the DVD or anything, but if you remember the plot, there was this really serious situation because the world got invaded by aliens, and not the kind of alien we're not allowed to talk about, somebody that broke into your country and didn't come legally. I'm talking about aliens who are breaking into your planet illegally, I guess, from another planet or star system. And in the movies, like in Independence Day and things like that, they always have really nasty motives. I don't think that's mostly true in the real ET world, but that's another discussion. So in the movie, with aliens, you know, looking like humans, unless you know how to tell the difference, they had taken control of all the governments, and there was basically a de facto one world government controlling everything, keeping the humans distracted, fighting each other, living in fear, obeying subliminal messages and orders of how they had to think and speak and act. And as I said, this couldn't possibly offend anybody because it has nothing to do with real life, right? Anybody who gets out of line in the movie gets attacked with overwhelming force by the police. And of course, it's just an old-fashioned horror movie. It's not really too scary. And it doesn't have to be believable, but kind of just a fun movie. Fortunately for us, we live in a real world where everything's normal, right? So we don't worry about any of those things. And if you were going to review this movie, what I thought, well, what could have been done to make it more fantastic and unbelievable, but more sophisticated and kind of up to date and complete and multi-dimensional and more challenging to the heroes to try to save the world, because in the movie as it's written, the only thing they have to do to save the world in They Live is they get a hold of these special dark glasses, and if you put them on, you can see who the alien invaders are from the other planets. And, you know, obviously their best idea of alien invaders was people that look like they have no skin, and it's just kind of an anatomy model with big eyes and half disappeared body and things like that. And I guess at that time maybe it was pretty terrifying, but now it's just slightly humorous. But one thing they explained was the invaders were just there to mine the planet, you know, take the resources and then I guess move on to another planet. They weren't really there to destroy it. They weren't like the real life situation that we're in. So as long as the humans in the movie were submissive and they obeyed all the subliminal orders to never question authority, then they were allowed to live in kind of a semi-sleep state. And that's why they came up with the slogan, they live, we sleep, speaking from the humans' point of view. And I was thinking, all right, how would they have made it more sophisticated? What if the purpose of the aliens in the movie was to destroy all the life on the planet, not to mine it, but to slowly kill it, to cause as much pain as possible in the process, ending up with no surviving life and even themselves? No, nobody would ever do that, right? That would be a totally unbelievable plot. And as I got into that, I realized, wow, we're in a real sophisticated sci-fi movie now, and it's more realistic than the They Live movie ever thought about being. If the plot of the invaders was to slowly kill everybody and all life and destroy all the different species on the planet within a certain time frame, then that would end. It would add like a time element to the plot, because instead of just saving the world, you had to save the world before they totally destroyed it. And I thought, wow, that's actually what's happening in our movie that we're in. And I didn't just look at it and come to that conclusion right away. I studied and investigated what the rulers in our movie are doing for about 20 years of really intensive investigation. And what I found out is, yeah, that's what they're doing. The end game, as it's often been called, is the destruction of all life on Earth. And Doug told me that there was a kind of a humorous but maybe perceptive comment by somebody in the chat in one of the major platforms, and they were saying, well, you know, Richard's so calm that if there were incoming nuclear missiles and he was announcing it, he'd just be relaxed. And I was thinking about that, and at first I thought, well, that's just humorous. It wouldn't be fun. It wouldn't be the real situation. But then I thought, well, wait a minute. If there were incoming nuclear missiles to all of our cities that we're in touch with right now on this electronic platform that we're listening from or that I'm talking from, and they were all going to blow up in 60 seconds, would it really make a lot of sense to just run around in circles and be screaming and going crazy? Would that slow down the missiles or change anything or make us feel a lot better? I don't think it would. I mean, I haven't tried it in that situation, and hopefully we won't get a chance to do that. But I realized whatever happens, even if it's immediate threat of the most terrible things we can imagine, going crazy, in my experience of lower grade situations doesn't really help. And that what I'm more interested in is if we can have a chance to get in touch with the power that we really have to turn this stuff around before we have 30 seconds left. That would be better. And that's really my interest right now. If we don't, and the missiles are coming in and it's 30 seconds, we always think, oh, in a terrible situation, you just have to be feeling so stressed and terrible, and not that it would do anything useful, but you just have to feel that way. And that's part of what we've discussed a little bit here, more in the Planetary Healing Club meetings. But your frame of mind and emotional state is totally up to you. It's optional. It's not like you don't want to suppress it, because that's really bad for you. Even your physical body gets hurt by doing that. But there's another level to operate on where you get into a better, more harmonious relationship with your own mind, and you communicate with it, and it's capable of communicating, two-way communication. And it's been trying since long before we were born. If you develop that, instead of driving you crazy, it becomes your ally. Something that the old yogis would have liked to know about, I think, because fighting it doesn't work. Anyway, in the movie, the invaders in They Live controlled the TV broadcasts, keeping the people brainwashed. And there were all these subliminal messages saying, obey, submit, realize you're powerless, watch TV, buy as much as you can, all these kind of messages. And of course, in the real world, we know that could never happen, right? We have total freedom in our world, and nobody's trying to manipulate us, except that the opposite is true. But in the movie, what if the media controlled by these invading ETs was much more sophisticated? What if they told the people that, all kinds of really crazy stuff, like people of one appearance, one skin color, had to hate the people of the other skin color, and they had to fight and be afraid of each other, and talk about how different they are, and how they have no common ground, and how the other side really doesn't understand them. What if we got that into the mainstream thinking, and everybody started being afraid of each other, and they started fighting, and then the invaders could do whatever they want because we'd be busy fighting each other? And I thought, wow, that was 1988. And yeah, it was still happening at that time for sure. But it's really happening now. And are we falling for it? And looking around, looks to me like we're falling for it. Enough of us to make a big mess. And maybe one of the things we should do, if we get a minute to think sometime, is realize what's happening, that the invaders in the movie that we're in have taken over most of the conventional corporate media, and they're telling us in various ways on different levels how to think, what's okay what's okay to say, what words you can use, what words you can't use. Any words that they decide they want out of your vocabulary, they define as hate speech, even if they have nothing to do with anything like that. And are we falling for it? Apparently we are. And in the movie, the objective of the attackers was just to take the resources of the planet. In our movie, and it actually on a different level is a movie, in our movie, they're planning to destroy all life on the planet. So it's a good thing to reverse what's happening and not to fall for it if we can find a way to do that. Even though what's really going on is totally unbelievable to any normal point of view. And we've been trained not to question authority, not to question what the television says, especially the newscasters that look really serious and compassionate and condescending, and telling us everything they can afford to tell us for our own protection and our own good, and telling us what to be afraid of and what never to think. questioning that is supposed to be unacceptable, but if we don't do it, this is likely to not stop. So, but a visitor here who really was from another place would say nobody would be dumb enough to think badly of each other because of skin color. I mean, that would be so dumb you couldn't even imagine. But we got millions of people out in the street thinking exactly that, and thinking that they're working for racial justice to burn down cities. They don't quite grasp the concept in logic that burning down a city doesn't create racial harmony and a better situation on the planet. It makes it much worse. And it makes it so, especially if the local officials and the governors and the mayors and people like that are encouraging the violence and destruction, which many of them are now. That leads to a really bad situation. I mean, we just heard, if I'm allowed to comment on it, in Portland, the state police were withdrawing from Portland because the mayor decided it would be a good idea to have as much violence as possible and just not prosecute any of the people that were arrested for violence and terrorism and things like that. They should just be let out and not charged. And so the police said, forget it, we're not going in here just to be killed. And on television, everybody's being taught that the police are all really terrible and that everybody's a racist and things like that. There's no reality to that, except in individual situations that have always happened. But as far as the country, like in America, being totally wrapped up in racism and things like that, it's basically totally untrue. And when somebody tries to put up the FBI figures of certain types of crime that would show that that's not true, which is really easy to instantly see, those figures are censored because you're not allowed to know about it. You're supposed to just be full of hatred and fear. And it's funny because they censor our language, saying that they're censoring it for our own good because it's hate speech. But they're promoting serious hate, violence, and terrorism. Instead, it's like we're supposed to have no ability left to follow logic at all. And the response to it is just that people start screaming. Back in World War II, we've had guests on the show like Barry Trower and Mark Steele and people like that were telling us that by the 1940s, the powers that be had the ability through frequencies to control behavior, and they could make somebody into a murderer or just a normal regular person, or commit suicide, or just go crazy and start running around the street naked or whatever they wanted to do. And that was in the 1940s. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but it's the 2020s now. That's a lot later. 65 years, something like that, and 70 years. It's more sophisticated now, and whistleblowers have come out of these private security companies, so-called, and said what their company is actually working on is mind control of an entire city at one time instead of a person. They found that was very time consuming to mind control one person at a time, and they wanted to do millions at a time. And that's going on according to the whistleblowers we talked to, all the major cities in America, probably all over the UK and Europe and Australia, New Zealand, places like that at the same time. And I would say that's part of the reason it's so easy for them to offer money and get people to sign up to be violent terrorists, rioters. A lot of them getting apparently $200 to $300 a day to break things and smash windows and burn down buildings and beat up people who can't defend themselves and things like that. Normal people wouldn't take that job, who their mind was operating correctly. So it makes you wonder, how are they compromised? And I think there are several ways. One is with the poisoned food that most people are eating with the mistaken idea that it's food. Water, they're drinking tap water because everybody else does. even if it's got fluoride and chlorine and toxic chemicals and heavy metals in it, which virtually all the tap water does. Well, it doesn't all have fluoride yet. There are some places that only have chlorine, but chlorine's bad enough. If you're going to drink tap water, you need to filter that out. In my opinion, of course, if you take your doctor's advice on everything, not mine. I mean, I'm not even a medical doctor. So if the doctor says that you should drink chlorine and fluoride and lead and things like that, then obviously he's right or she's right. But it just seemed to me that it would be better to use water and food and things like that that are clean. And we're also compromised by breathing what is dumped into the air from the geoengineering that you're not supposed to know about too. You can just imagine a situation like in They Live, where if the people were told that health should be controlled by the government and toxic chemicals injected or swallowed so that they get into your body and that those should be called medicine, any sane visitor from another planet would just start laughing and say, nobody would ever believe that stuff. Certainly nobody would ever do it. You wouldn't eat poisonous chemicals if they said medicine on the bottle. You would never do that. You're smarter than that, right? A system like that would never develop. But, you know, something happened and it did develop, and it wasn't by chance. That all started in America anyway after 1910, when certain foundations decided it would be great business model to become the only game in town as far as using toxic chemicals for medicine that would make people sicker and maybe cover up symptoms of one thing and make them fall prey to a different disease. And the doctors would be trained in the same kind of medicine. And they'd say, well, shoot, we cured you with the last, toxic chemicals, advanced medicine. And now you've got another disease and there's no reason for it. It's just bad luck. You ran into the wrong germ, or you have weak genes or defective genes. But don't worry, because we have some more toxic chemicals, pharmaceutical advanced medicine that will make you all better right away, and just take this and insurance will pay for all of it except for $1,000 a week out of your pocket, but it's worth it. And if you wanted to get totally ridiculous about it, what if the aliens controlled the TV in the movie and told people in the movie that food should be grown and processed with poisonous chemicals? Again, the sane, normal visitor from another planet would just laugh, unless he or she knew that it was really happening, and said, nobody would fall for that. Nobody would ever shop in the part of the store where the food is all full of toxic chemicals. They would not do that. They would know that they don't just blindly trust the health authorities to take care of that and guarantee that it was safe. Nobody would be that dumb. But that visitor would be unfamiliar with how things are in the world right now. Same thing if they told people that poison should be put in the drinking water to make them healthier and prevent tooth decay. Nobody would fall for that, right? Right? The visitor would say, no chance. Humans are actually intelligent creatures, at least in theory, and they would never do anything like that. And somebody would ask them, well, what about if it was convenience? What if they were really busy and it was saving time? And the ET visitor would say, oh, come on. If they knew American slang, they'd say, give me a break, right? Nobody would ever fall for that. What are they, total zombies, unconscious zombies walking around? And, we mentioned the geoengineering too. What if, without telling them anything, the authorities just started spraying toxic metal all over the sky, even over the ocean? Because toxic metal, the reason they call it toxic as a metal is because it's poisonous and it kills things. And the only reason to spray it over the ocean that I can think of, since there's not that many people living on ships out there, is to kill all the plankton, which kills the web of life in the ocean. And not just, the authorities that tell you you're the horrible person that's not being a good environmentalist. Well, they're doing the geoengineering that's killing the entire life chain in the ocean, and they're paying for it. And well, they're using your tax money to pay for it. So again, the visitor would say, no, that couldn't even happen in a movie. I mean, that's ridiculous. And people would never go along with it. They'd all show up at the airstrips where those planes landed, and they would have discussion with the pilots. They wouldn't just say, well, I guess that's what's happening. You know, we have a certain number of time to live. Let's try to watch as many good TV series as we can before it gets too toxic to breathe. Most of them don't even think about it that much. But that spraying is going on. And what if that toxic metal dust that they were spraying into the atmosphere for our protection, because the sun is obviously a mistake of God, right? That God didn't adjust the temperature quite right, and the sun is really about to kill everybody. So the scientists who are more advanced than God are spraying the material in the air supposedly to block the sun so that we'd have a nice, cool, air-conditioned planet, and God would be able to be relieved and say, thank God I invented those really smart humans who caught my mistakes on the temperature of the planet for me. But actually, it's not. It's the kind of metal dust that doesn't just block out the sunlight that everybody needs to stay alive. It also creates explosive fires. And what do you know? That's what they've been seeing in places like Paradise, California, and Santa Rosa, California, and other places. And they fit right into a particular agenda where you get to move people around. Very interesting, involved strategy. But we've had Clifford Carnicom and other scientists on the show who've taken and analyzed the components falling out of the geoengineering residue. And they said, no, don't worry, it's not just toxic metals. It's biological weapons too, with life forms in there we don't recognize, what we've called cross-domain bacteria, things like that, and we have no idea what they're doing. But the people who put them in the mix have an idea what they're doing. All these, I'm convinced that with all the medical stuff that people start complaining hasn't been fully tested to be safe and everything, I don't agree with them. I think everything's totally tested. They wouldn't waste the money on it unless they knew how much harm it was going to do, and you can't do that unless you have complete testing. It's just not given to the public. But I don't think there's any medical treatment that's not fully tested before they roll it out. But the question is, with the spraying all this toxic dust on the earth, would people on that planet be so far gone that they would fall for that? It's hard to imagine in a normal situation, but that's the situation that we're living in now. And you could say that as those extraterrestrial invaders got close to destroying all the life on Earth, what if they wanted to inject the actual people with special poisonous mixes to permanently corrupt their natural DNA so that they'd even be easier to control at the end stages? And a lot of them would just get sick and die and get out of the way that way. And they'd make sure that nobody who was involved in injecting people with that stuff would ever be responsible for the death and damage. Would anybody ever fall for that? And in normal situations, of course, nobody would. It would be a total waste of money. Nobody would put up with that. Nobody would allow themselves to be caught and forced to take that kind of a treatment. But that's not just a potential plot enhancement for They Live. It's already happening in another movie, and we're the characters and the stars in that movie. And it's really, the plot is really bizarre. I mean, it's beyond any actual horror movie that I ever heard of. It's kind of a combination of horror movie, action adventure, romance, action, I don't know, all the different genres together. And you're the star of the movie, actually. They're telling you the They Live government, which is real right now on our planet, not looking like that necessarily, but with intentions like that or worse, they're telling you that's a treatment that you have to have that's going to keep you safe and give you special privileges, like, I mean, amazing things that you get to do without additional permission, like go out of your house, use the bank, use a bank card. Actually, they may not have bank cards pretty soon. They're trying to have injected special advanced financial systems where it's going to save you all of that worry about losing your bank card, because if it's an injected dye into you that's readable on the outside and transmits and receives electronic signals, then just think of all the hassle you'll be saved, because you won't worry about losing your card or your credit card or anything like that. That's the movie that we're in. We're reading our parts and our scripts, and we're so much like the general population in They Live that we're not even questioning whether we have to read that script. We're just saying, well, it's my script. It's what I have to do. I'm told the rules by the authorities, and I just have to do it. I don't know what the name of that movie is that we're in, but it's being shot right now. And you're in a really unusual position because you're the star of the movie. And I'm not saying that lightly. I know there's a few billion other people, but in a deeper level of understanding beyond the quantum physics level that's usually talked about, everything in your world is being projected by you. So you are the star, and you're also the audience getting to watch it at the same time. It's a huge project, and the set of the movie covers the whole planet. And you're the main character, and you're doing a perfect job of playing your character. But what we're not told is that we can play any character we want. We can change the role anytime we feel like it. As it is, they haven't even told us that we're in the movie. And that way we play our parts as if we really were the characters, extremely realistic. But we have choices in what characters we play, and we're not told about that. So, you know, in They Live, in the movie, the heroes just had to put the special sunglasses on, you know, and then suddenly they would see all the alien invaders and the ET people that weren't really human, and be able to fight with them and immediately see what was really going on, and just shut down the one broadcast center that was sending out all the fake propaganda and hypnosis and subliminal messages, and then the world would be saved. Yeah, but in the movie that you're in, it's not that simple. And, you know, I'm looking at this from a kind of an unusual point of view, because I know, well, I'm not going to say I know anything that you guys have to believe, but in my experience, we're not even physical beings. We're made of spirit or consciousness, and they can't destroy us. And I have experience that backs that up. But we're wearing these amazing physical costumes, these bodies that are actually not just intelligent, like the chiropractors say, but they're self-aware, capable of communication, which we're never supposed to find out about. There's so much higher level of existence that we have available to us, and it's just really distracting, because we're coming from a place where we originally were that's permanent, unchangeable, and this place changes second to second like quicksand, and it's really quite a challenge to live here and have any awareness of who we actually are. We tend to immediately fall into identifying with the character. We identify with the programming that we've gotten into, told that we're helpless, that the government is taking care of us. In the case of the insane rioters in the street, whether they're getting paid for it or whether they're a volunteer, they're believing this frequency radiation programming that they're not even aware they're getting, thinking it's their own thoughts. If they got any self-awareness coming in, which is what the rulers are trying to prevent, those riots would be over in a second, because they'd say, what was I doing? What was I doing? That's insane. I'm not going to burn down anybody's house or business. And what a joke that that's about any kind of justice at all. It's just about insanity. It's about being a programmed robot of the power structure, not really the best thing for us to become. But in our movie, the whole thing is so organized and controlled from a much higher level. It's not the elected officials. It's not the appointed officials. It's people that you don't see, probably don't even have names that we would ever relate to. They may not use names at all, very small group. And at that level, where this issue is coming from, it's totally not about money. It's not about money at all. Money and promises of power are used to motivate the ones who are serving the system farther down the ladder. But the ones at the top are in it, and it's hard to grasp for a normal human. But they're in it for the pain and destruction and the darkness for its own sake. They're not doing it for a profit, not the kind of profit you get paid for in money. They're serving darkness and methodically killing all the life step by step. And once this is really understood, then if you want to understand what they're doing with the pandemic, or with the paid rioters in the street, or with the poison that is put in your food by the mostly well-meaning farmers when they grow it, and they're just highly educated in our completely corrupt educational system that, yeah, poisoning food is the scientific way to do it. Because if you didn't poison the food, the world would starve to death. Completely ridiculous. I mean, again, referring to the sane visitor, the alien from another planet who's not trying to kill us, is just visiting and observing, they would say, no, impossible. Nobody would ever actually eat food that has poison residues in it that, by the way, you cannot wash off. And no farmer who's not entirely insane would grow food and poison it and then sell it for people to eat. That would never happen. And this is why I've been ostracized and excommunicated by people on both right and left, so-called right and left side of the spectrum, because they're reading their party line script and they're saying, the ones that call themselves conservative or on the right, some of them are brilliant, but some also are thinking all environmental concerns are just stupid. They're all a hoax. They're like the climate change nonsense. They're all lies. And I'm saying, no, they're not. Poisoning your food and then eating it is not brilliant. You really shouldn't do it. And since nothing happens by chance that I've ever encountered in the world once I understood what was happening, there's no such thing as random chance. It's just that we don't know what's going to happen in advance, so we think there's chance involved. But everything is cause and effect, down to the most minute detail. So if you want to get rid of epidemics of degenerative disease, and again, we're not supposed to talk about that because I guess we're anti-science if we think that there's any logic to it. But if you don't want to get degenerative disease, then maybe you shouldn't be eating poison or drinking it. Give your body a chance to clean itself out as fast as the poison is coming in so it doesn't get overwhelmed. That used to be understood by doctors, but now doctors, like teachers, have become facilitators of the programming. And they just look up on the computer, okay, here's your diagnosis. It's got a number on it. And here's the treatment. It's a toxic chemical. An advanced pharmaceutical medicine. And so that's what you get. Or we say these are the organs in your body that have to be cut out for your own good. Or this is the radiation you need, or other kind of toxic IV therapy like chemotherapy or something super advanced like that. In the old days, before medicine was taken over by these giant interests that will do very bad things to you if you try to expose this kind of stuff. In the old days, the doctor was responsible for figuring out what was wrong with you and how to get better. And they had natural remedies listed in the Merck manual even that are gone now, replaced by, I guess they call it medicine. At the moment, the humans aren't waking up fast enough to have this movie go very well. And that's really what I would like to see. I mean, at least on an individual level, for the people that are ready to do the work that's required in shaking off the hypnosis, because you can do it. You can get free of all this stuff, but not just by saying it, not just by saying, I believe I'm free of it. A belief won't do it. And belief is hope. You're hoping that you're not wrong, but you need to be going further and not wasting your time hoping you're not wrong and finding out if you're wrong, and getting the direct experience. Learn whatever you have to for that. So this show, the title on the show on some of the announcements was How Evil Wins. Evil being, in this context, pain and suffering and death and destruction and extinction, things like that, for their own sake. In other words, the people doing that intentionally to cause as much pain as possible on the way to exterminating life on the planet, including themselves, by the way. That's one thing that's really not understood that much, is it's a total suicide mission. If it weren't, they wouldn't be destroying the life support system that they themselves would need if they're planning to stick around. And they're destroying them all. Geoengineering the oceans, everything. But if we don't wake up from the hypnosis in an individual situation, or as a species of humans, then evil gets to win, not permanently, because we're not what we think we are. We have permanence to us, that we're not just destructible in the end. Maybe these bodies are, but we're not. We never have been. And you're not supposed to know about that, because God forbid you might start feeling empowered and like you have choices. And like, in a way, we're not going to run out of time no matter what. The time in this chapter of the movie might end. And if we don't wake up now, it might not end very well. But then we are going to have to come back to the same lesson in other circumstances, because you can't leave it unlearned. Nobody gets left behind. And I don't mean to quote the old government program, which was a fraud. I'm saying for real, nobody gets left behind. But what we have to go through on the way to get there varies, and it's really in our hands, and we have a lot of free will. We could start waking up anytime we choose, but you have to be willing to trade other things for it. The arrogance has to be dropped. All the fun of fighting and proving that you're right and everybody else is an idiot has to be dropped. Humility doesn't have to be fake. In fact, it can't be fake. That's something different. It's just a show. But if you find out, whoa, we don't really hardly know anything compared to what there is to learn, you've got your humility as long as you really grasp that. And you're not going to want to argue and fight with people anymore. You're going to want to help them. So if we want this movie to go better, in They Live, they just had to kill all the bad invaders. That doesn't work in this scenario that we're in. Because if we try to solve the whole situation with destruction and killing, there's a frequency of everything, and it's not just a new age crazy belief, it's real. It's even been picked up on very sensitive electronic equipment. Every life form is emanating a frequency all the time, including us, of course. And it's very powerful. And it does things on a level kind of beyond what we've grasped as reality, that actually starts to create physical level events and behaviors. We're never supposed to find out we've got that ability, because if we did, the whole game of destruction and extermination of life would stop. We have immense power. And sometimes people talk about, you know, and I said I was excommunicated by some of the people on the right. People on the left totally have excommunicated me as well, because I, you know, think that every country should have protected borders. There shouldn't be break-ins through those. Free market and free enterprise, free market system is the only reasonable economic system that gives you motivation to go out and actually do something. The opposite, and you know, people on the other side say, well, that's terrible. Government should just give everybody free money. And why haven't they done that from the beginning? We need justice right now. Give us everything free. And the problem with that is not that you shouldn't have everything you want, because you should. But if you do it by an entity in charge, a government, just creating so-called money out of nothing, if you know basic economics, which we're not supposed to understand, but it's not that hard to understand. There's a certain amount of goods in circulation in the world. There's a certain amount of money to buy those things. There's a ratio between the two. And if the amount of money in circulation goes up, the value of them and the amount of goods in circulation doesn't, then the value of the money goes down. The people in charge know this very well. And so what are they doing right now in the movie that we're in the middle of, or I think a little bit past the middle of this chapter? They're starting to do these so-called stimulus packages, which they probably don't know any choice, but the people who are really behind that in the central banks do know all about it. If they're issuing all this money just by decree, it's called fiat money. And they're shutting down production of real goods. So what does that do to the ratio? Basic math lesson, right? The ratio of the money goes up compared to the goods in circulation. The value of the money goes down, because you can't buy more things to buy than the ones that exist. And so the price goes up until that balances out. Eventually the money becomes like what happened in places like Zimbabwe, and it becomes worth nothing. And they were issuing notes, banknotes for trillions of dollars that wouldn't buy anything. That's exactly what's being engineered right now. So it's kind of important that we get our consciousness back, because we have levels of who we are that are so powerful. They could change physical level things in the outside world. In They Live, they saved the world just by killing the invaders. That's not going to work this time, because if you just do it by violence, you get new violent rulers, and a lot of times they end up worse than the last ones. I think this is a consciousness test, and I would like us to pass it. And it means you have to drop some things. You can't just change what you say. You have to drop hatred of anybody. You can't think badly of somebody because their skin is the wrong color. That's really stupid, by the way. We should never have fallen for that anyway. And it's not any one particular race. It's thinking of any race as better or worse because of the skin color is really unintelligent. We have to drop that completely. Look, if you want to know somebody, look in their eyes and be still inside yourself, and you'll see who they are. They're all individuals. They're all spirit underneath the body level. So you have to drop the interest in showing that you're smart and the other guy's an idiot. That has to be gone. And think, not what can I take from somebody else so that I'll be above them, but shaking off the hypnosis means, wait a minute, we're all the same, not identical bodies or talents or brains or experiences or anything, but the essence of who everybody is, their actual identity on a real level. Even the bad guys, even the designers of new GMOs who know that they're going to ruin the gene pool of the planet, even the people making the chemical weapons and the biological weapons like the one that they released for this situation. That's all coming from the mind program. Underneath that, they will eventually get free of that and realize, whoa, how did I ever fall for that? That's not who I am. And so there's no basis to hate anybody. Self-defense has to still be honored because you don't want to just let yourself be run over. But as far as hating anybody or any kind of fear also has to be dropped. I'm just saying prerequisites for us getting some progress in the consciousness that is going to determine how this movie ends. There's no physical action that we can do that's good enough without a change in consciousness. There's no political system that will work with an unconscious public. You can see in America we've got a constitutional republic, not a democracy. The people, even well-known good people who have talked about our government, they talk about our democracy. There's no such thing in America. The founders thought democracy was a terrible idea because if you can brainwash 51% of the public to vote for the destruction of the other 49%, that 49% is dead. It's very bad for that minority. And in a constitutional republic, provided the Constitution is written by people who have a little bit more wisdom and write it for individual freedom, not the good of the whole, which is a big trap, then you have a good structure. Even that structure, a constitutional republic with a good constitution, because a constitutional republic with a bad constitution is terrible. It's worthless or worse. But even if you have it with a good constitution and a good setup, and you have free market enterprise set up and you support individual inventiveness and creativity and don't take all their money out in taxes, and you do everything good like that, if the public is unconscious or very low awareness, they will sink into what we're seeing now because the worst ones will take over. So it's not a matter of just physical level fighting. It's a matter of, can we get a minimal, like a critical minority of the public to shake off the mind programming? I think that's what it's going to come down to. And I don't know how much time we've got left in this particular chapter of our bigger scale movie. I want this chapter to end well. And we don't have a whole lot of time to make that happen. The people that released the current bioweapon that is being called just a fluke of nature and some terrible, unfortunate event, which is complete nonsense, they have a lot more things they can release. This time they released one that is not nearly as deadly as they're claiming. That's why they need all the fake numbers to make it terrifying. And the cure is the way to completely get the people over it, who are the few cases that are actually due to it. Those are all being hidden and censored and demonized, and the doctors who dare talk about it are being destroyed. That's the situation that we're in now. The same people can release a real bioweapon that's much worse, and that could be what our unelected medical rulers have said is coming. That's their plan. And then they're going to come up with a solution, and the solution is going to be probably more dangerous than the problem. So I don't know how much time there is before that happens, maybe just months at the most. So before that happens, we need to do the work internal in ourselves. It might not look like it's relevant to the outer situation, but it is. And it's not just relevant, it's what everything depends on. So if we don't do the internal work and shake off the fake identities that we have, this is not going to go well. I mean, you might have noticed it's not going well at the moment in a lot of ways. There's some good signs, but they're not enough. So there are different levels of things that people can do. You know, we're being trained right now to follow nonsensical, illogical mandates and proclamations and just follow them because it's to stay safe, right? And everybody wants to be safe. But the founders of the country and wise people in every other country knew that to trade freedom for safety means you end up with neither one. And so you have to have some courage. You know, you can't believe this junk on the media that you're helpless. You need teams of experts to tell you what to do. Don't trust anything in your own intuition where your feeling is leading you. Feeling and internal guidance is all superstition. That sort of thing is what we're told. And the opposite is true. That's why we're told that. So you don't need a special degree from a school to become conscious and really start learning. It's totally in your hands. And you start looking at everything that comes to you in life. Stop thinking of it as without cause, random chance. That's all nonsense. There's no such thing. And then you start looking at, well, why did this happen? What did I do that led to this happening? Not what did somebody else do to make it happen to me as the victim. What did I do? That's a huge hidden key, because it's counterintuitive. And it looks like everything that happens to us, we're a victim, and it's because of circumstances or other people. That's what keeps you unconscious. If you take responsibility for absolutely everything in your world, you might think in the beginning it's blaming you for things that you shouldn't be blamed for. It's the opposite. It opens up the beginning of your power to make it better. People want to know about how to learn manifesting things in the real world, so-called real world, in the physical world. Well, they miss, and we got to stop in a minute here, but they miss the fact that they're already manifesting things in their whole world all the time, 24 hours a day. They're just not maybe manifesting the things that they'd like to, because it's all scattered and it comes out of the internal state. So the main thing is learn, be willing to learn what there is to learn in that. Get your consciousness back. You're not a body and you're not a mind. You're way more. And you get in touch with that, and then we have a chance, and even a sure chance, to turn this all around. So They Live was simple, but we're in a movie that's a lot more sophisticated and much more complex. But the offsetting part of that is the hero, which is you, is way more than the heroes were shown as in the movie They Live. You're the real hero. And it's hard to grasp that you could be somebody spectacular on a global level or higher, but you are. And will enough of us realize that in time to turn this movie plot around? I would like to have that happen. So if you think that would be good, do whatever you have to. Look at yourself all the time, scan yourself, drop all arrogance, drop the desire that we're all living with to prove that we're right and we're smarter than everybody else, and drop the idea of blaming people or condemning people in your mind. That's just the very beginning. It's not selfless. It's the most selfish thing you could do, because it'll help you the fastest, and then you take it from there. So that's what we're working on in Planetary Healing Club. If you want to join us sometime, you're welcome. The deeper levels, and we meet every week live in a non-censored environment, half an hour after this show ends every week. And we get into some stuff that we don't have to worry about what we say. And I'll just share, with you what I've found in about 55 years of digging into this stuff. And then we talk freely about whatever you want to look at, health stuff, the forbidden health information that's violently suppressed, especially now. We talk openly about that. Not to tell anybody what to do at all. I'm not a medical doctor, but it's still legal to share information. That's what we do with that. And then on deeper levels, to change internal consciousness. Not a new belief system, nothing like that. I'm talking about experience, changing your whole existence. That's what we're working on. But you don't need Planetary Healing Club to do that. You can do it on your own. You have all the potential inside yourself. Either way, on your own, with somebody else, or in our club, for mutual support. Whatever appeals to you. I'm just saying that's the time. That's what time is running out on in this chapter. So They Live ended well. They saved the world by getting rid of the invaders. In the in our movie, it's going to be a bit more demanding, but you have immediate access to everything you need for it. So consider the value of the time, whatever we have left, and use it really well. Don't blame anybody else for anything anymore. Take it on yourself and realize that the minute you do that and mean it, you've got immense power to make things better. So anyway, hope that makes some sense. If you want to help us stay on the air, which we're really trying to do right now, and get our other projects done and maybe build the school that we know we need to do on the physical level, if you have the financial means, you can support us at the donate button at lostartsradio.com or lostartsresearchinstitute.org, our nonprofit, which actually runs everything, or subscribestar.com/lostartsradio, any of those. And make sure you subscribe to brighteon.com/channel/lostartsradio. That's where the censorship is not planned to happen, and you can at least find us there. Keep up with everything at lostartsradio.com. We put news articles up every day and videos that I know you don't have time for all of them, but there's some interesting stuff in there that you might not otherwise see. And in my opinion, you're the key to the whole thing. You personally, not generically everybody that's listening to this, but you. So if you take responsibility and have the intention to start, amazing things will happen, and you'll notice that they're not by chance. Then you start experiencing things on a whole different level. So thank you for being here. I'm sorry I'm over 3 minutes or so, or 4 or 5 minutes. I'm sorry, but we started a little bit late. I hope you have a great week. Remember that tomorrow night's show is on Lost Arts Radio, the regular guest show, and it's going to be incredible as always. And if you miss the exact time, which is 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, you can get all the archives for free on that. Just stay in touch at lostartsradio.com. And otherwise, have a great week. Take care of yourself. And realize that if you want to contribute to the world, your family, your friends, anybody else, it's all about, are you going to upgrade yourself, work on yourself? That's the best thing you can do for everybody. So nice to see you again, and we'll be back soon. We'll see you next time.